person, because that's who, fire department.
I'll be right.
You want me to go out and see if anybody else is out there?
Come on, let's just start.
I don't think Dylan's filming.
He's not. Welcome you here tonight to our special meeting, audit presentation 2016, 2017, and also we have an executive session tonight, which will not be allowed to stay. Let's bow in prayer, please. Dear Father, the maker of the heaven and the universe, God, we know you know all about it. And help us tonight to prepare and do things that are right for the city of Darlington. And let us bring unity to our city. And let us govern ourselves accordingly to what we need to do to bring our city forward. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Our 2016-2017 audit presentation, Webster Rogers.
Ms. Ellen Atkins. Ms. Ellen Atkins.
Ms. Ellen Atkins.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I am Ellen Atkins. Excuse me, I'm kind of cold here. I'm a partner with Webster Rogers. We're headquartered in Florence. And we did this 2016 audit, and now we just completed the 2017 audit. I'm going to be brief because this is kind of old news. Here we are, we're almost to, we're in 2019. So I'm just going to hit kind of what really happened in that fiscal year, just to give you the very brief highlight. If you look back at that year, I think I categorize it as that the city was investing in itself. You did a lot of things with the sewer, started your stormwater. There were a lot of initiatives going on to build your infrastructure, to strengthen the infrastructure. You did the LED lighting project. There were a number of things that you did that really is an investment in the city and in the longevity of the city. You also did some police cars, and there was a fire pumper truck. So there were things in the day-to-day part of living too for the city, but there's a lot of investment in infrastructure. In total, there was about $2.5 million in completed projects that year. At the end of the year, you had about $450,000 in projects started, which included the Carnegie Library and another drainage project. And of course, all it had to be paid for somehow. And so that year, in addition to investing in infrastructure, it was also a year that you really pulled on grant funds. In the past, 2 years before that, you didn't even have to have a single audit because you get that much in grant money. In 2016, you got about $800,000, and in 2017, it's about almost $1.3 million in grant funds and federal. So I need to stop.
That was a council member calling saying her father had fell and she had to take her to the hospital. So she will not be here. Ms. Reed, yeah. Sorry.
No problem. But for the fiscal year we're talking about, you got almost $1.3 million of federal funds, plus there was some state grants as well, and there was some, in addition to that, that was a big increase for the city. In addition to that, you also borrowed some money. That year in total, the borrowings were about $6.5 million. You did pay off about $1,350,000, so it wasn't a complete just jump of $6 million. That included 2 revenue bonds, which means you've already identified the revenue streams going to repay those. You've got a stormwater revenue bond of $1.3 million, and you had a hospitality revenue bond of $1.9 million, which was to be used for the recreation and expansion of tourism through that sort of investment. You also did a $1 million general obligation bond, and that was to work on city buildings. And then you also borrowed for capital leases, and that's usually for things like the loaders and the police cars and fire trucks and things like that. And that in total, between water and sewer and general fund, was almost $800,000 in capital leases. And then you also had some notes payable for in total about almost $1.5 million. So there was a lot of borrowing that went on that year to pay for that investment in infrastructure. But the good thing is some of that was already tagged as to how it was going to be funded. These revenue bonds are outstanding ways for the city to grow. because you're using future money that you know is coming, because you know you're gonna get the hospitality money, and you know you're gonna get the stormwater revenue. So, at any rate, that's kind of how, when I look back at that year, those are the big things. You invested in the city, and you had to take a little bit of a bite of some debt to get there. It's an investment. As far as the financial statements go, the rest of the financial statements, if you exclude the debt and the fixed assets, it was very consistent with the year before. There really wasn't a lot of fluctuation in normal operations. The one change was starting the stormwater fund. So in general, it was pretty steady. So what came to our opinion, if you look on the first bound of the thick bound volume, go on about 3 pages, and you'll see our letterhead. It's actually numbered page 1 right after the table of contents. And that's what you engage us to do. The rest of this document is your financial statement. This is not something that we don't make up these numbers, these are your numbers. And you engage us to do an audit where we look at transactions, we look to see if it's been handled properly as far as what was intended, and then we express an opinion. And the last paragraph on page 1 says, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects the financial position of all the various activities and the respective changes in financial position and cash flows for the year that ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. That is what we call a clean opinion. That's the best you can do. Commend the city, because it takes a lot to maintain the books, and the fact that you were able to get a clean opinion is commendable. Even though it's late, you still had the records. That's really all I was going to say about the financial audit. The other report I want to talk about was it's a thinner bound volume. And it says reports required by government auditing standards and uniform guidance. Basically, this is what we call the single audit package. And we come in and we look to see all that grant money, did you handle it properly? And you have certain laws that you're supposed to follow, like your budget and your procurement practices and things like that. Did you do what you were supposed to do? And if we find where it's a material problem, where you are significantly violating what you're supposed to do, we would report it to you in this volume. I don't know how many of you remember the 2016, but there were 4 major findings. And this year, if you go, start on page 9. Pages 9. Page 9 is the current year issues. Pages 10 and 11 are the status of last year, of 2016's issues. And so we did have a material weakness, and it goes back to these internal policies. We felt like you did not follow all the policies the way that you have set them up, and you need to tighten up on that. Some of it's in the way of processing payroll, PTO, paid time off, procurement. Are there proper people approving things, or is sometimes things are getting through with the wrong level of approval? You have certain people that can approve up to a certain dollar amount, and then there are other people that have to approve above that. And there's some things where maybe dollar amounts weren't even put on there, so we don't know if that was the proper approval. So that just needs to be tightened up. It's not unusual for a government to have that sort of an issue. The other issue, the other item is in part 3, and that talks about dealing with grants. And you are required every year, within 9 months after year end, to submit to the federal government a status report of your grants, basically. It has to be done within 30 days of the issuance of your audit report, or 9 months after year end, whichever is earliest. We weren't even engaged to audit that year. We didn't even finish the year of the 2016 audit until we were into November 2017. There's no way you could have met this requirement. And so there is a finding that you did not submit on time. And it will happen again this year. That's not unusual either. It's not ideal, but it's not unusual. The last 2 pages are the status of the prior year findings. We had management give us a response as to what have they done about them. Again, as I mentioned, we didn't actually finish June of 2016 until November 2017, so they really couldn't have done anything in the year into June 2017 to fix that until after the fact. And they were able to remove a couple of the findings. You know, I commend them for that because that was it took some effort. So, also in this volume, it does show you the various federal grants that you received. It's just a schedule in here called the Schedule of Expenditures of Federal Award. That's on page 6 if you're interested in what were the grant funds.
6.
Page 6. You got some from the USDA, which was the Community Facilities Grant, which surprisingly was police car. Makes no sense that USDA would do that, but they did. Department of Commerce, EDA, that was one of the big sewer lines. You got some HUD money, which was carried over from prior year. You had the COPS, which actually pays for a police position. You had the State Energy Program, which paid for your lighting program. And then you had the SAFER grant, which pays for firemen. So some of those are continuing grants, the COPS and the SAFER grant, but some of them were brand new money that you only haven't got. So I commend you for that. The last is there is a letter that's stapled probably in your packet. This is a letter from the audit firm to the board members. And it tells you what was the audit like, what were significant estimates in this financial statement, just sort of a communication of letting you know what we think is important about what happened in the audit. I'm not going to go through it. It is a communication from the firm to you. If you would like for me to come back and work with you in a workshop on reading these financial statements, or anything that you would like to understand more about these financial statements or about this letter, I'd be happy to do that. Attached to this is a copy of the journal entries that we did do. There are a lot of journal entries. There are also the representation letters that management signs. Management has to say that they take responsibility for these financial statements. And they read them, and they make these representations to us. And a copy of those letters are in here. So you can see what it is that management agrees to. So that's really all I had to say about the 2017 year. As I mentioned, it's kind of old news, and I know y'all have a lot of other things you want to talk about, so I'm not going to take up any more of your time. But if there's anything that any questions I can answer or try to answer, I'll be happy to. Or to come back at some other time to do a workshop, I'll be happy to do that as well.
The federal filing deadlines that you said that we aren't going to be able to meet this year, is there anything we can do to kind of catch ourselves up so that we can get ahead of them eventually?
You've got to get the audit back on track as far as when the timing is ready. As an example, we issued the June 2016 audit in November 2017, so you automatically, there's no way you're going to make it, right? Because it had to be done within 9 months of year end. So you're already starting behind. You've got to get the audit done, preferably in the first 6 months of the subsequent year. And that means you got to get, if you're going to bring in a consultant to help clean this up, because it's a lot of volume. And staff is keeping the things going day to day, and maybe there's some things that need to be researched, and those are always the things that get put on the back burner. And so there's always questions that need to be answered and so forth. So you'll have the last 2 years engaged an accounting consultant who has come in and helped to try to get things ready for the audit. But again, it's subject to their availability. And I know the consultant that you've been using, that you used for 2017, is extremely busy. We work with her on other governments, and she's extremely busy. There are some out there that maybe aren't as busy. I'm not saying, and she did a fine job, but she's just very busy. And there are some other consultants as well. I think, and this is not written in here anywhere, I do think it would benefit the city if you had someone that would come in on a monthly or quarterly basis and look through the financials, look through the numbers and raise questions and get things cleaned up during the year so it's not a big to-do at the end of the year, because ultimately that's what's happening. And we're issuing 2017 right now. I don't think June of 2018 is ready for audit. Some consultant or someone's going to have to come in and help get that ready. And it may be a couple months before that's completed because it's subject to their availability. And unfortunately, it's just going to take a lot of effort to get to the point where y'all are back on track. I know it started 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, when a prior auditor had gotten behind, and And there were some problems at the county, getting information from the county. And these things are slow to recover from. Once you get behind, it's a Herculean effort to pull it back around. But you're not alone.
I know we're not the only one, so you're saying now that, we need to go ahead and start now, get somebody to come in and once a month and try to help pull us all together.
That would be my advice, is to have someone that comes in on a regular basis and looks through it and says, what is this? Is this done right? Let me see the grant document. Let me make sure this is handled appropriately. So it's not done at the end of the year, like in this case, 12 months after that year or more. And it's sometimes hard to get that information because it gets filed away. So, or memories fade or whatever it may be. So I do think it would be beneficial to the city. Right now, you still need someone to help you get ready for the June 2018 audit. Because I doubt that you're ready for that. So you need someone to help get you ready for 2018 and then keep things going and then actually start looking at 2019, not wait until 2018 is done, but start looking at 2019. That's how you'll get to where the June 2019 is closer to being ready for audit during the proper audit period.
I think we were held up by the previous auditors, we got behind with that and that kind of delayed things because I think the day-to-day operation, these young ladies have a whole lot to do.
They do. They
And
absolutely
they can't
do.
keep up with all that during the week.
Right, and I've been on both sides of it. I've been an auditor and I've been an auditee. And it's disruptive for the auditors to be on site.
It is.
And we try to be as kind and gentle about it as we can, but the fact of the matter is we're here to do the job too. But they've got their day jobs to do too. So I definitely understand what it's like to be on that side of it and being the receiver of the audit. It's an interruption.
Well, within that, each department need to know what they need to do to get their part,
Mhm.
so they can give it
Mhm.
to Ms. Pritchard.
I think ultimately, if you could have had a consultant that came in and would help you set up a structure and a process, so that every month there's a process, a checklist that's gone through that says, yes, we've done this, this, and this, and here's the proof, and you actually have a file that supports that one. There's ways that you can do it, even if it's a small city, you can still do it. But it takes an investment in time and investment in people. So, and I appreciate all the cooperation from the staff. They were very helpful, very patient with us. We unfortunately have a number of other clients, and when we came in and realized that things were not ready as we'd hoped they were going to be, we had to move on to other clients that were already ready. And so we contributed to the delay because we weren't available. When we could come back, it's not always convenient for y'all for us to come back and vice versa. So we contributed to it. I would like to see the city get back on track to having the regular audits. It's going to take some effort.
Check the page. Anybody else got any? I'm trying to find the page that it was, to put a check on it. I want you to go back over that for Mr. Garland. He wasn't in here when you went over that.
You're talking about the findings?
I think that might, I don't remember what was in it. Let me see. I'm trying to find what it was.
What was it?
Mr. Garland, you remember where we were when you came back in? You left out the room. There was one. Which one it was? Oh,
Jen, book or thick book?
the thin book.
With the single audit back.
I think when you went over the first part, the material weakness,
Right.
he wasn't in here when you came in and did the second part.
Right. This is actually a similar, a repeat from the prior year. I've tried to enhance the wording a little bit to tell you the areas that we were having an issue. And the bottom line is that you have policies and you have some controls, but you don't always follow them. You don't always comply with them. And so, as an example, you have a policy that invoices up to a certain dollar amount can be approved by, say, the department head, but if it's over that, it has to go to the city manager. Sometimes we were looking at purchase orders and there's no dollar amounts on there. And so there's things that aren't being followed. Ultimately, the city manager approves it when money goes out as the vendor gets paid. But the fact of the matter is, you have policies that aren't always being followed. And I'm not trying to point a finger at anybody, it's just that and this happens a lot. You have policies, Sometimes it's urgent, something needs to go out, I don't know how much it's gonna cost, I'll fill it in later, then I'll circle back and do that. There's some issues on paid time off, vacation time, about what is the consistent policy, because there's some questions about what the official policy is. We have a capitalization policy, I think it's $5,000. If you have an item that's purchased over $5,000, it should be put on your asset listing and depreciated. We were finding things in the repair account that really should have been capitalized. Just things that weren't handled consistently. And this is an example of where if you had someone that came in on a regular basis to look over and just say, well, what about this? I mean, that would be something that would jump out. Same thing with budget, comparisons to budget. There's opportunity to make it stronger. And that's what that finding is about, is internal policies and procedures are not always followed. And that is a material weakness because it can affect your financial report.
Questions?
So there wasn't a lot of invoices without amounts on them.
We only did a sample, and the two things on invoices were invoices, purchase orders. One had to do with the proper person approve it. I don't remember if it was the population. We looked at 60 of them. I don't remember 5 that didn't have the proper approval on them. Then of the 60, again, we're talking about 60 out of hundreds, thousands of transactions. The other thing we were finding on that was the general ledger account code that was assigned to an expense didn't always make sense. It might have been office supplies and they put it into repairs. Things like that. It's just, you have account categories, you have budgets that are by detail, and the categories on these expenses should be consistent. And so we found, I think it was about 10% of them, we thought that the account coding probably was not appropriate. That was not saying that the expense wasn't a legitimate expense. It may have been a perfectly fine expense, it just wasn't put in the right place. And that's not, and that usually is driven, I believe, by the departments. They choose where it goes in their department. And so if they say one place, finance isn't necessarily going to challenge them on that because it's their department. So those types of things, and it's not uncommon in small towns, it's not uncommon in big towns for these things to happen. So, but that's what that finding is about. And this is a repeat finding. Last year's was, I think, worded a little vaguely, and so you probably don't know that you really got as much out of it, but I want to be more specific in the comments.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a safe trip home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
We need to vote to approve.
Can I get a motion to approve
I'll motion that we approve the 2016-2017 audit presentation by Webster Rogers.
I'll second.
any more discussion? It's been properly moved that we accept the 2016-2017 audit presentation by Webster Rogers. All in favor, let it know the sign aye.
Aye.
These have the same right. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I need to go into executive session for economic development presentation. The city of Darlington may or may not hold after executive session. Can I get a motion to go into executive session?
I'll motion that we go to executive session for economic development presentation. The city of Darlington may or may not vote after closed executive session ends.
Second.
Okay. It's been properly motion that we go into executive session, presentate the city of Darlington may or may not vote after. All in favor?
Aye.
They gonna say aye. Okay, these have the same right, okay. Yeah, I know the, Frank and Lisa, need to stay.
Okay.
Kevin, the lawyer.